Ladies and gentlemen, I would remind you that for some excellent entertainment here at the Aladdin Hotel, we are presenting the outstanding review country tonight in the Aladdin showroom. The show times at 7:15 and 10 o'clock. So if you want some excellent entertainment with Karen Nelson Bell and Marilyn Kay, it's country time tonight at the Aladdin showroom, 7:15 and 10 p.m. Thank you.
Earlier today on the Heavyweight Explosion, we saw a great heavyweight fight and featuring Andrew Golota as he takes on Andre Smith here in Las Vegas at the Aladdin Hotel Casino. Now we're ready to go as Mike Evans gets ready to battle on the inside as we're battling here. And it's Dan Murphy. Murphy in the green and Mike Evans, Mighty Mike from Chicago, Illinois. Dan Murphy out of Omaha, Nebraska, and is managed by Bruce the Mouse Strauss. And right now in the red is Big Mike Evans, 262 pounds, 217 on Dan Murphy. And Evans has been leaning on Murphy throughout the first 3 rounds of this fight.
Yeah, but Murphy's giving him a lot of trouble here, Sam. He's boxing well from the outside. He's just, for the first time in the fight, Mike is really trapping Dan on the ropes and really getting to work that body the way he wants to. He's kind of taking the legs out from under Dan Murphy.
You can see that big body of Mike Evans just leaning on Dan, not really doing much with it over there as he's kind of laying him onto the ropes, but that's about it.
He's not, it doesn't seem like he's doing much, but it's certainly where he wants to be as opposed to the outside on the end of Dan Murphy's jab. You know, Mike Evans was a former collegiate wrestler, and he's comfortable in those close quarters on the inside.
Matter of fact, a world amateur champion at 220 pounds, so about 40 pounds ago was world renowned as a wrestler.
As much as Dan Murphy shakes his head and says it doesn't bother him, he's not hooked up with his behind on that third rope for no good reason, Sam. He's there because that's where Mike Evans has put him.
Mitch Halprin is the referee, the third man in the ring, trying to break up these big guys. Murphy again just comes leaning in and is just inviting Mike Evans to throw some punches at him. Evans will certainly be the one to oblige if he has the opportunity to do so. There again is Murphy lunging for a punch, and Evans just steps right underneath it.
Yeah, Mike Evans' career really was rejuvenated here on the Heavyweight Explosion with that big KO win over Gary Winman. Bushkill Falls, Pennsylvania a few months ago, Sam, and here he is trying to keep up the good work here in a tough contest with Dan Murphy, who's beginning to hold here in the 4th round.
You know, Winman was undefeated, 13-0 before he was knocked out by Evans, so that indeed was a nice fight for him on our Heavyweight Explosion from the Poconos.
And he was ahead on all scorecards when he got stopped, so Mike really turned things around here, and he's trying to keep it up. You know, a win over Dan Murphy here today could propel him into an opportunity fight here in the heavyweight division.
Closing moments of the 4th round of this schedule for 10 rounds here in Las Vegas. So as Mike Evans takes a seat on his stool, getting ready to take a well-deserved 1-minute rest here, he and Dan Murphy, known as the businessman out of Omaha, Nebraska, fighting through the first 4 rounds. By the way, here's a reminder, coming up on Monday at 9 p.m., you can look on at the U.S. Open highlights with Cliff Drysdale here on Mnet Super Sport. Cliff, of course, will bring you all of the highlights both on Monday, Tuesday, again on Wednesday and Thursday. Then they'll follow continuous live coverage of the U.S. Open from New York City in the USA. It'll be on Friday through the last shot coming up on Sunday. The U.S. Open Tennis Championships right here on Mnet Super Sport. Highlights Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Continuous coverage starting Friday through the finals on Sunday. Both of these fighters trying to get exactly what their game plan would be. Murphy, who we thought would try to box from the outside against Mike Evans, is relegated to leaning against the ropes and taking all of that push and shove that's going on. Let's see if that changes here in the next round. We're underway in round number 5 of this heavyweight fight as Mike Evans again in the red and the businessman Dan Murphy in the green. And again, Evans pawing with the left jab, trying to set up the big right hand. Now Murphy electing to stay on the bike and keep away from him here in this round.
Dan, he took that last round off and just rested on the ropes, and I don't know why you would call it rest, because he had Mike Evans on his behind the entire time, and he needs to stay on the outside and work that jab and try to loop that right hand that he was successful with earlier in this fight. He's got to keep Mike Evans off him, Sam.
Straight left jab again thrown by Evans. Big right hand went right over the top, and then a little friendly shove by Evans. Evans again, a looping right hand, missed with a right hand again. Left hand caught right off the ear of Murphy. Just looking, this is a bigger version of Bruce the Mouse Strauss. He was the consummate of the journeyman around the world. He had the distinction of being the only man knocked out on, 7 continents around the world, or whatever it was.
I don't know if Dan would appreciate that comparison, but they are good friends. Dan's getting low to try to avoid that right hand that Mike's trying to put on him when he bends at the waist there on the rib, but he's putting himself in a bad position for that, and Evans is certainly capable of coming back with the left hook, and I'm sure he's going to make that adjustment here.
The third round, of which Murphy did survive today, was a round he'd just as soon forget. He was knocked out in the third round by South African Pierre Coetzer. Knocked out in the third round by Tommy Morrison, and knocked out in the third round by Greg Page. So just getting by the third round was almost like a victory in itself for Dan Murphy here today.
Well, oftentimes in those fights with world-class fighters that Dan's been put in with, he'll shoot his load, he'll box as well as he can for as long as he can, and usually that's in and around between 7 and 9 minutes, because he's taken these fights on short notice and hasn't had the correct amount of time to prepare and really get himself ready for a 10-round fight.
Evans again continuing just to lay on Murphy on the ropes. Murphy 31 and Evans at 34, so both of these guys just trying to hope for a little bit of piece of the package somewhere along the way. And right now, Mighty Mike has had this stance throughout much of the fight as Dan Murphy, you can see, just kind of hold that left glove right up next to his right side of his face. Or left side, excuse me, hoping that the right hand will catch off the glove and not hit him squarely, because Evans does throw a pretty good right hook.
Yeah, Mike's taking what he's got there. This is a wrestling match, a lot of pushing and shoveling and grappling in there, but that doesn't really bother him, and he's just landing those short little shots on the inside and roughing up Dan Murphy. That certainly favors him in the exchange.
So Dan Murphy surviving still one more round as we move through 5 here. The scheduled 10-rounder, we're halfway through. And Mike Evans, a former IBF Intercontinental Champion, sitting on his stool with, again, that 28-7-1 record with 20 wins by knockout. 22 of the 40 wins for Dan Murphy, however, have come by the knockout right as well. That's Malcolm Garrett, by the way, working as well over there in the Dan Murphy stable. Or excuse me, this is in the Mike Evans corner, as once again they're working here on the near side. Malcolm Garrett, one of the gentlemen working with Cedric Kushner around the world and kind of helping in much of the matchmaking capabilities and facilities that go on around the world. As you take a look at Dan Murphy, tough customer, taking some pretty good shots, no marks. Maybe a little bleeding from the nose. Now Mike Evans as they clean him up and get him ready for the 6th round. Now Mike Evans as they clean him up and get him ready for the 6th round. From the Aladdin Hotel and Casino here in Atlantic City, New Jersey, Sam Smith along with Bob Spagnola, heavyweight explosion number 4. And in the ring are 2 of the bigger guys on today's card. 262 Mike Evans in the red and Dan Murphy at 217. Of course, Evans certainly the biggest of the ones we've had in the ring so far today. We've had him close at 258 and 261, but he's got 262, so he wins the weight award today.
And Mike, he was concerned about his weight after the Windman fight, where he weighed in the mid-50s, and and then he turns around and comes in even heavier here. He's really got to battle that. It's definitely a consideration for Mike Evans to be able to do, to keep up the work rate that he needs to do to beat better fighters. He's got to get that weight down.
And you take that into consideration as that Cedric Kushner on the heavyweight explosion is keeping him busy. It's not like he's out of the ring for several 2 and 3 and 4 months at a time. He just fought July the 10th.
Oh, that's right. He's got to show some personal discipline, and you know, it's harder when you get a little older, and you know, you've got the experience, the benefit of that experience, and you think a little bit of that extra strength will help you push these guys back. But you know, he doesn't need any more weight to push Dan Murphy back. He needs to take advantage of some of that quickness.
You know, I was making mention that Murphy has had trouble through the third round in particular of the losses that he have absorbed this year. Evans used the first and the third round for 10 of his 20 knockouts. He got 6 in the first and 4 in the third, so he could not do what he wanted to do in either one of those rounds with Dan Murphy. Now here they are in the 6th round, leaning on each other. And as you pointed out, Mike Evans, a renowned wrestler, likes that position. One of the things he'd like even more is to get outside and just give a push away and then throw a couple of quick combinations to see if Murphy could counter with him, which it does not appear that he's been able to do so far today.
He's not doing all what he wants to in there with Dan Murphy, but Dan can't hardly do anything in there, so Mike's at the advantage. It's not pretty, but it's effective for Mike Evans.
I guess when you look under boxing vernacular and you see smothering punches, I guess you'd have a picture of this fight, wouldn't you? That's exactly what Murphy's doing.
The photo in the dictionary. But he's smothering his own is the problem.
That's right.
He's not just smothering Mike Evans's.
And there was another thing that is certainly becoming telltale signs here in this fight as we fight in this 6th round is that conditioning has not been a forte of either one of these guys so far. They're both laboring in the 6th round.
Mike Evans has got that Versa climber on his trunks there, and that if anybody's ever worked that machine, that'll take it out of you. I don't know how much Mike's been on that thing, but he needs to get back on there.
A rumble right in your living room here. Closing seconds to the 6th round. Dan Murphy in his corner kind of smiling about what's going on as they know they'd like to get him at long range on Evans, so at least throw some punches. But again, the way Evans is kind of just muscling his way inside and again smothering the punch has been very difficult for him. Latin Hotel and Casino, the site of our heavyweight explosion, and of course it'll all continue again on October the 2nd. Will be at the Merv Griffin Resort in Atlantic City. For some more of the heavyweight explosion, we'll go to heavyweight explosion number 5. It'll be coming up again on October the 2nd, and we're hoping for a good card on that night as well as the heavyweights get their opportunity. Those on their way up, and those kind of like right now in the middle ground. Do they go up or do they go down? We'll find out, of course, on the explosion as we'll carry the fights from around the world for you. By the way, the explosion will be coming to South Africa in November, the first week in November, so that should be a good opportunity for you to enjoy the heavyweight explosion live. We're ready for the 7th round of this fight, scheduled for 10. Mike Evans on the right in the red, and the businessman, Dan Murphy, in the green. Let's see if Murphy can get anything going here, or does Evans smother him again in the 7th round? Murph's trying to keep him at bay with that long left lead jab.
Dan, it seems like every other round he comes out and tries to get those legs fresh and bounce around and box a little bit. He's got to keep this up. Mike Evans isn't, real quick to shorten up the distance in between, but Dan can't sit here and freeze himself on the ropes and give that open target for Mike Evans, because Mike certainly will take advantage of it. And there's 2 good solid body shots by Mike, picking out the corner of the rib cage there on Dan Murphy.
Mike is rather deceiving as far as his reach is concerned. As a matter of fact, I went back and checked a couple of other records. Mike Evans has an 81-inch reach. Murphy, the taller of the two, at 6'5" compared to 6'2", has an 80-inch. So despite the compact build you see there on just that big back of Mike Evans, a good reach at 81 inches for Mike Evans.
Yeah, Mike makes up about 8 inches across his back there.
That's
that
right.
Dan doesn't have going for him.
Like one of those guys that could pull a locomotive if you get him in that kind of contest as well.
Yeah, Mike is very adaptable when it comes to feats of strength.
Big legs, big trunk.
But movement always has given him problems. You look through his record, the guys that have beaten him, and quickness and movement is the kind of thing that most recently is lost to Marshall Tillman as a quick-handed fighter. Really an overblown cruiserweight, gave Mike Evans a lot of trouble down in New Orleans.
Some of his other losses, referring to Mike Evans, he lost to Tony Tubbs, lost in 10 rounds to him. Lost to Tony Tucker, lost a 10-rounder there. Tillman, the aforementioned fighter we mentioned. Alex Garcia beat him in 10, and of course Corey Sanders also went 10 and defeated Mike Evans. As a matter of fact, after the fight that Corey Sanders had with Bert Cooper, he said, "Let me tell you, Mike Evans had a punch as well or better than I felt tonight from Bert Cooper." So a compliment going to Mike Evans from Corey Sanders, the undefeated heavyweight from South Africa.
Dan Murphy seems to be reduced, really, although he throws a combination there to just trying to survive here as opposed to win. But he took this fight on very short notice, and Dan's also got a problem out there in the Midwest to get work, although he was telling me he gets to work with Dickie Ryan, who's really a kind of a mirror image of Mike Evans, a bull of a really hard body puncher and a rough inside fighter. Dickie Ryan from Omaha.
So Evans brawling again in the corner, closing seconds. So this is the 7th round of a scheduled 10-rounder. And again, Dan Murphy in the green, Mike Evans in the red. Finish out the round. Murph doesn't have far to go as he was in his own corner when he and Evans exchanged at the ends. Evans strolls across this rather small ring here at the Aladdin and takes a seat as he gets himself prepared to see what he can do about the same old thing as he stayed inside. He wanted to stay inside, wanted to rumble, and that's exactly what Dan Murphy's allowed him to do. And you got to have a feeling that the rounds, particularly from 4 on, have been pretty much controlled by, again, Evans here against Dan Murphy. By the way, you had a good look there. The glove, you saw the tape on the glove and a signature on it. That, of course, is the way they do it in most of the commissions. It has to be signed by an inspector as they watch the gloves going on, not only the taping of the hands, but also the putting on of the gloves. I guess the old Joe Palooka, you can't put a horseshoe in there. But again, they sign it, and once the inspector signs the glove, they are set and ready to go to the ring, and they're ready for the 8th round. Murphy off his stool in the green, and in the red, he'll be joined by Mike Evans. He comes from stage right. And they're ready for this 8th round of a scheduled 10-rounder. And again, a uphill battle for Dan Murphy, just first of all to get off any kind of offense, and secondly to keep Evans off of him. You see Murphy trying to use that motion to keep out of the harm's way of Evans. But he's not showing any offense, and that's one of the reasons he is very badly down on the cards unofficially here at ringside.
Oh, really, he's, you know, Mike Evans is following Dan Murphy around the ring here, but he's doing a little bit of fighting that's going on here, Sam, is being done by Mike Evans as the referee in there tries to cheer both men on and get them to get it on here a little bit. Mike has to find a good home for that left uppercut to the solar plexus on Dan Murphy, and he's got Dan's hands land. Now he turns that hook upstairs, and he's got Murphy in trouble here. Murphy tries to work off the ropes, but he's holding with both hands.
Murphy, you saw, had kind of held that left glove right up next to the side of his head. That time it dropped down, and it was a home for that right hook thrown by Mike Evans, and he threw it 2 or 3 times and landed all 3 of them. Murphy, in self-defense, just had to come back and throw some retaliation punches to get Evans off of him. Mitch Halpern having a pretty tough time with these big heavyweights. A looping shot to the middle of the back that time. Murphy on Evans. That may have been a shot.
He was hoping Mike could run right under that one.
Looked like it landed on a landing strip right in the middle of the back.
Right, come on.
Look at the back of Dan Murphy where he's been giving that to Mike Evans, and Mike's been taking it. It's got an everlast imprint on it over there, I think, Sam. Mitch Halpern's warning him for holding because Dan's wrapping Mike Evans up every time they get in the inside, and it's really slowing down the pace of this fight.
Yep.
And it can't stand much of that, Sam.
It is right now running in molasses, so to speak, here in the 8th round. Again, Mike Evans kind of pop-shotting on Dan Murphy here in the 8th round.
He's hitting Dan wherever Dan will give him, and it's mostly on the top of the head, but...
By the way, a light cut on the outside of the left eye now by Murphy. We'll have to address that between rounds. It's right on the eyelid. By the way, that snapping sound you hear behind is the 10-second mark of the round as they stop time here for a moment, and apparently a low blow thrown by Murphy, and you see the grimacing in pain there of Mike Evans. He'll be giving an opportunity to just gather himself. He's gone into his own corner. And now they'll start the time, and Evans tries to come out and finish it off here in the round as the bell sounds to end round 8. So the 8th round ends after a momentary stop there with a low blow thrown by Murphy. Evans got up and tried to land the home run punch just at the end of the round. He missed as Murphy goes back to that corner. And again, they have not addressed the cut on the outside. Now they start to work on it a little bit outside the left eye. And again, I thought it was on the eyelid. It's just above the eyebrow, so no real problem there. And it looks like it is a rather small one right now anyway. More blood.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah, really, for the amount of shots that he's taken, really, Dan Murphy looks remarkably. He looks like Mr. Businessman.
He does indeed. I was looking for his briefcase before the start of the fight. I didn't see it over there. Mike Evans, mighty Mike Evans from Chicago, Illinois, 34 years of age. And, of course, we pointed out he's been in there with some pretty good ones. Unfortunately, he's been unable to win the big one they needed to vault him over the top as he tries here in the heavyweight explosion at the Aladdin. Sam Smith, Bob Spagnola with you on the heavyweight explosion. Delighted you could join us this afternoon as again Murphy and Evans. Murphy with his back to you in the green. And a solid performance so far by Mike Evans, and a lack of performance, offensive-wise anyway, from Dan Murphy. Has pretty well told the story of this fight.
And you can't really blame Mike Evans. He has come to fight here today, and he's made the fight, Sam. And it's not necessarily the kind of contest he wanted, but all he can do is what he's got an opportunity to work with. And Murphy's been very defensive, and as you can see early in the round, he continues to hold.
Evans stalking him around the ring, trying to catch up with him here. This is the 9th of 10 of the 10-round fight. Evans again walking across the ring, waiting to... There you see he feeds about 8, 9, 10 of those left jabs. Come back with a combination. There's Murphy's normal style. After he takes about 8, 9, 10 punches, he throws 2 or 3 of his own and comes off the ropes.
Referee Mitch Halpin doing a heck of a job in here today, Sam. And he certainly earned his money here as Dan Murphy.
Now there's going to be a point deduction, I believe, or at least a warning, and a very stern one here to Dan Murphy. And now the time has been resumed, so a let me take control of this fight again by Mitch Halpin.
I'm not sure exactly what the call was on that, but he might have warned him for coming with his head with reckless abandon, which Mike Evans stepped to the side, and Dan went rumbling across the ring. That's about the 3rd time it's happened in this fight. Dan just can't get any lower than Mike Evans, and when he tries, Mike gets that center of gravity down, and he's in there working.
A rumble right above us here in the 9th round of the fight. Evans again feeding that left jab, and you see as he sticks that left hand up underneath the arm of Murphy, it's like a vice.
Yeah, Murphy clamps down on that.
He does indeed. Well, you could saw a piece of wood under that arm, I think.
And that voice that we've heard throughout this 9 rounds of this fight is Frankie Evans, Mike Evans' wife. And I think Mike is a little bit more fearful of Frankie at this stage than he is of Dan Murphy. And that's no disrespect to Dan.
By the way, Frankie, the wife again of Mike Evans, she and Mike have 5 children back home in Chicago, Illinois, and they'd like to have one of those big paydays coming up in the heavyweight explosion, but Frankie, as a matter of fact, is on her feet and screaming instructions to her husband, Mike.
Yeah, she's his biggest fan.
Murphy, you see, just tried to throw some punches, but again, that little...
Trying to pull the trigger there at the end of the round, but...
That little balled-up style of Mike Evans is making it very difficult to get anything to hit. Most of the punches that Murphy is throwing, but few they are, catching right off the shoulder and doing no damage. Ninth round of this fight comes to a close as both fighters will head to the 10th and final round. And a reminder for you, on Monday at 9 p.m., look forward to the United States Open highlights with Cliff Drysdale. He'll be coming to you from the U.S. Open site in New York and USA. Cliff will bring you all of the highlights on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then, of course, continuous coverage of the U.S. Open Tennis Championship from New York on Friday through the final shot of the finals coming on Sunday. All of that right here on Mnet Supersport. Mike Evans trying to gather one more 3-minute round in his arsenal here against Dan Murphy. Again, no problem with the little cut over the outside of the left eye. Created no problems at all. Has taken quite a few punches from Evans, but no ill fate so far. Let's see what happens here in the 10th round as they're ready to go for the final 3 minutes. Two fighters will touch the glove for the final 3 minutes of this fight. This is the 10th and final round of the heavyweight of our heavyweight explosion from Las Vegas, Nevada at the Aladdin Hotel Casino. Sam Smith and Bob Spagnola with you, and they're going to wrestle again, it appears.
I really think Mike Evans is going to make a concerted effort to try to get Dan Murphy out of here, at least in the early part of this round. He's going to try to make something happen, thinking that Murphy's probably saved it for 9 rounds, and now might try to make something happen himself. But I mean, what he looks like in there is a praying mantis, Sam. He's locking down on Mike Evans, and there's no shame here at all.
Evans brawling towards the ropes again, trying to get Murphy.
Murphy's got him with both hands. Nice, well-placed uppercut.
Another one
by Evans. Found its mark with Dan Murphy, who clamps down him. You know, Dan's done a little wrestling himself, actually helps out at the high school there in Nebraska where he lives. And he's putting on a clinic here today with those overhooks. And Frankie's calling for Mike. Mike's trying to pull out from underneath that stuff, but Dan will have none of it.
So it appeared they were trying to go the best 2 out of 3 falls here, but in essence they're going 10 rounds of boxing, and right now Mike Evans has had the upper hand of a very, very slow fight this afternoon.
Can't really blame Mike Evans, though. As we see again, there's Dan holding with both hands.
You know, that's what happens a lot of time, and not to say that Mike Evans is the class in the heavyweight, but even a flashy heavyweight with a good record and everything in front of him, if he fights a fighter that does not complement his style, it can be an ugly fight, and certainly this one has turned out to be.
Yeah, well, here he tried a single leg takedown on Evans there, and Evans, to his credit, is trying to let it all hang out here in the 10th and final round, Sam. Try to get Dan Murphy out of there.
By the way, they are fighting right over top of one of the judges and a longtime referee out here in Las Vegas, Davey Pearl, as a big right hand is thrown by Mike Evans. An uppercut. Murphy may be in big trouble here. He cannot be saved with the bell except for this round only, and now cut under the right eye. And Evans has time. Pounding away on Murphy. Mitch Halpin right on top of him. See if he's going to stop it. There's no standing 8 count here in Nevada. He looks long and hard at Dan Murphy. He's content that he can continue.
With Dan just trying to survive here and maintain some pride here, but his legs have betrayed him. He's stepping in post holes out there right now, Sam. And you can see these judges are already filling out their cards for this round.
Closing seconds of the 10th and final round. A big right hook again by Evans. As again, Dan Murphy has brawled with Mike Evans, but Evans has been the main man today. The big guy from Chicago, maybe 34, but he has gone through the activities here this afternoon and come up with a victory. At least on our unofficial card, we'll wait for the judges to officially call it here at ringside, as again we'll have that decision coming from Chuck Hall very quickly, as again the cards are being collected by the referee and handed over to the commission. For Dan Murphy, again came in with a total of 40 wins, 11 losses, and hoping to get a win today, but that was not the case. As again, he just tried to brawl with Mike Evans, and that was the wrong guy to try to do that with. Evans at 262 pounds did a lot of leaning on. When he was able to throw some punches inside, he was setting down on them and did some damage. You could see the cuts there on Murphy above the eye, right on the cheek, as they start to work on it here after the fight is all over again. Very small cuts, but nonetheless, you can see that that right hand did have a home, and it was right there above and below that left eye. And big Mike Evans standing tall here in Las Vegas, waiting for the official and the time. Let's go upstairs. Here's Chuck Hall with the decision.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the decision of the judges. We have a unanimous decision. Judge Davey Pearl scores the bout 187. Judge Lou Tabbitt scores it 190. And Judge Paul Smith scores 190 for the winner by unanimous decision, Michael Evans.
yards. Comes up with a shutout here as he wins all 10 of the rounds and celebrates a victory here this afternoon. His 29th as a pro against 7 losses and 1 draw. He has 20 knockouts to his credit, and certainly one of those you'll be seeing a little bit more here on our Heavyweight Explosion. Bob Spagnola is just about getting ready to go upstairs, and let's go upstairs. Here's Spag with, once again, Mike Evans.
I'm here with Mike Evans, the winner after the fight. How you feel, big fella?
Pretty good. Press. All right.
No, I mean, it was a hard fight. He was holding you just a little bit after the first round on.
Well, I didn't come prepared. Like this, he fought a difficult fight, holding, awkward. So, still, when I took the fight, still, a lot of other fights fell out for me. So, I wasn't really like I should have been. That's why I came here at 262.
But really, that's an interesting point, and we talked about it. You really have to address that situation with your weight. You're here, you put together back-to-back wins against decent opposition here on the Heavyweight Explosion. If you're going to parlay that into something, you really got to stay in the gym and get your weight down, Mike.
Yeah, it was dealing with manager situations and fights that fell out. So, it's up downhill battle. But now everything was smoothed out, and I trained for the fight late, and so I came in for the real difficult guy who didn't want to fight really. Just want to survive, and them the hardest fighters to fight, the ones that want to survive.
Absolutely, but after this, and you got these 2 good wins back to back. What's on the horizon for Mike Evans?
Whatever Cedric have in mind, Well,
there's been some talk about the Michael Moorer fight.
Yeah, that fight there, I come in around 235 for that fight. Then I get serious about training and not taking nothing light, and so that's the big thing now. It's that fight there, And so these fights was to get me ready, and so. At where I'm at now, the level I'm at now, I came through, but this right here, hey, and when guys don't want to fight, it's hard to fight them.
You really do got to get your weight down for that next one. All right, congratulations, big fella. Back to you, Sam.
Mike Evans, along with Michael Moore, could be quite a fight as it comes up in the near future on our Heavyweight Explosion, as Evans again gets the unanimous decision over Dan the Businessman Murphy here at the Aladdin in Las Vegas on the Heavyweight Explosion number 4.